This video is going to outline the details of the personal workout design assignment that's in your grade 11 or grade 12 physical and health education modules. So let's get right to it. Why are we creating this workout? Well, we're making this workout, or you're making this workout, so that you really understand what the important elements of a workout are, and so that you can create something for yourself to do in your own time. One of the challenges that a lot of us have is we might want to go and log some hours, or maybe you're really excited about working out and you're not exactly sure what the first steps that you need to take are or how to go about doing it. So this assignment is going to help you get the tools and the knowledge that you need to at least get started with that. Now, for the purpose of this particular assignment, we're going to define a workout in a very specific way. If you look in your book, a workout is defined as this for the assignment: a time-efficient, full-body, interval-style workout that targets the muscular and cardiovascular system. So the goal of this workout is to get your whole body moving and to get you into that moderate to vigorous heart rate zone, 65% of your maximum heart rate and up. Now I'm going to break down the different parts of that definition as we go along, but that's the main goal. Get your whole body moving and be able to get yourself in that moderate to vigorous heart rate zone, because we know that there are a lot of benefits. One, to getting your body moving, every part of your body, but two, to doing that in that moderate zone. So the next component in your booklet, just follow along with me in here, is the anatomy of the workout, the components of fitness. So we will be making sure to include muscular strength or muscular endurance. We're going to be working the musculoskeletal system, so you're going to get those muscles worked. Cardiovascular endurance is going to be an important part of this as well. You might think, okay, well, I'm lifting weights, I'm working cardio. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And flexibility and mobility are going to be highlighted in your warm-up and in your cool-down. So the way that we create our workout is going to be guided firstly by the muscular strength, muscular endurance component. And we look at that not in the way of, am I working my biceps, my back, am I working my quads? We actually look at bigger movements. So if you look in your book, under movement groups, we break it down into upper body movements and lower body movements. So I'm not going to go in that in detail in here. What I'm going to say though is that the upper body movements, instead of being broken up into arms or chest or back, are broken up into pushing movements and pulling movements. So pushing movements are any movements where we're pushing something away from our body. So that could be pushing from our chest away, pushing from our shoulders up, but we're pushing away from our body. Pulling movements are the exact opposite. It's where we're pulling something towards our body, whether it's pulling it towards our chest or pulling it from overhead down, anything in that area. So when we look at our booklet for pushing movements, one of the first pushing movements you have is push-ups. So imagine that I'm on the ground, I'm pushing the floor away from me. That's a pushing movement. Look down your list, you're going to see chest press, overhead shoulder press. Again, over my shoulders, and I'm pressing or pushing away from my body. All right, now look on the other column where it has the pulling movements. The first pulling movement in your book is the rows, and there's lots of different row variations. So rows, I'm now grabbing maybe cables and I'm pulling the weight towards me. Or I'm bent over and I'm pulling the weight in. One of the hardest exercises that's on the list is pull-ups. So I don't expect that many of you are going to do that, but just for the example here, I'm grabbing the bar and I'm pulling myself up. So that's how we break down the upper body movements into pushing movements and pulling movements. Okay, and in your book you have a whole bunch of examples, and if you go to our TechVoc Phys Ed YouTube page under the grade 11 and 12 playlist, you're going to see videos that have examples of a whole bunch of pushing and pulling movements. So make sure to check that video out. The next category is lower body movements, and we break those down into knee dominant and hip dominant movements, or hip dominant and knee dominant exercises. So the first example there is squats. Now you're not going to be able to see me do a squat here very well, but squats, we have our feet apart and we're sitting ourselves down. The big movement is at our knees. If you think of doing a step up on a bench or a box, the big movement is at your knee. Okay? There's a lot of other examples there on the page of different lunge variations. Those are all knee dominant focus. Now a hip dominant movement, the big action instead is at my hip. So if I'm doing a deadlift, I'm reaching down for that barbell or that kettlebell. Hips have the biggest movement, and I stand up tall. That's my hip dominant movement. And that's how we break down the lower body movements. We don't think about, okay, am I doing a quad exercise or hamstring exercise or looking at specific muscles. We're looking at the movements. And within those movements, if we're making sure for upper body to have pushing and pulling, lower body to have knee dominant and hip dominant, we're going to be covering all those different muscle groups within those movements. Now, the last category in your book that you're going to see is core and stabilizing. So the core and stabilizing exercises are things that you would be familiar with when you think of doing things like plank, side plank, maybe plank reaches. There are a lot of examples here. Now the thing that I want you to keep in mind is that the core and stabilizing exercises are exactly that. They're stabilizing exercises. We're actually not trying to create movement in our core. Now if you go to, again, the grade 11 and 12 playlist on our YouTube page, you're going to see core exercises. I'll go more in detail, but what I want you to know is that we don't do things like crunches and sit-ups. We don't do Russian twists or side crunches, because we recognize that the function of the core isn't actually for us to be creating movement in our spine. In fact, that's very dangerous, and we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble hurting our backs and hurting our spine doing that. But we want to have exercises like the front plank, for example, where we're trying to control and limit or eliminate movement in the spine so that we're not having that shifting. So Russian twists, we actually want to avoid that twisting. We might do a movement like a chop, where we're grabbing a weight over our shoulder and chopping it down to the side. And in doing that chopping action, our core is working to not let this twist happen. So I want you to check out that video on core exercises that'll explain that a little bit more. But those are our 5 major movement groups: pushing, pulling, knee dominant, hip dominant, and core stabilizing. I want you to flip the page, and you're going to see the next part, which is cardiovascular endurance. Now that's not a specific movement group, but it is an exercise type. And when we create our workout, cardiovascular endurance, although we're going to be moving weights or moving our body in our workouts, we're actually going to be doing a lot of cardio. So cardio doesn't mean that you're going to go out for a long run necessarily. Cardiovascular endurance focuses on developing that respiratory system, working on our heart, our lungs, those veins and arteries, to transport oxygen through our body and create an efficient, strong heart. The way that we do it in this workout is by using intervals, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but basically we're moving from one exercise to the next. We're doing a whole bunch of big muscle group exercises, those pushes, pulls, those knee and hip dominant exercises, stringing them together with very little rest in between, and that's keeping our heart rate at a higher level. But one of the ways that we really hone in on cardiovascular endurance is by adding cardio exercises. And like I said, it doesn't have to mean running. If you look at your list in the book, it has examples of stationary sprints. So running quickly on the spot, jumping jacks, skaters, which you might not know, but you can check out the video again. That's in our grade 11 and 12 YouTube playlist. Burpees, skipping rope, things like that. So those are full body exercises. They get big muscles moving, but the focus is on doing them really quick, really fast to keep that heart rate up or get that heart rate up in our workout. So that's how we incorporate cardiovascular endurance. 1, with very specific exercises, but 2, with getting one exercise after the next and keeping our heart rate up. And we'll talk a little bit more about arranging our exercises in a bit. The next part I want to highlight in your book is the warm-up and the cool-down. So the warm-up and the cool-down, basically the warm-up, the point of that is for us to warm up. Now what does that mean? It means getting our heart rate up a little bit, warming up our body temperature, getting lots of movement through our joints so that our body is ready for the challenging workout that it's about to do. If you're going to go and play some soccer or play some basketball, you also want to do a warm-up to prepare yourself. Now, the keys that we mentioned in the book to a warm-up are: one, it slowly increases the heart rate and body temperature. You don't want to go from sitting down, watching some Netflix, to going and doing your workout within the same minute and your heart rate skyrocketing from resting to moderate to vigorous. That's really hard on your heart, and it'll make it tough for you to keep that workout going. So we want to slowly increase our heart rate. It improves the movement quality or the mobility at our joints. It lubricates our joints. So we want to make sure before we start doing squats with weights in our hand or doing any push-ups that we do kind of some slow controlled movements to warm up the joints, get everything moving nicely. Okay? The third thing, it activates the core. So you want to have something that's going to wake up the core. The core helps connect the upper body movements and lower body movements. It helps us kind of stay coordinated and keep our balance. So we want to do something that's actually going to wake that up, get that kick started before we get into our workout. And the fourth thing here, it rehearses the workout movements at a lower intensity. So if you're doing squats with some weights in your workout, you might do some really slow squats and just hang out at the bottom position, go through the movement so your body's kind of getting prepped for what it's about to do. Now, in your booklet, it gives you an example of a basic stationary warm-up. So you would spend maybe 30 to 40 seconds on each of the 10 exercises, go through that once. That's going to take you about 5 to 7 minutes, and your body should be prepped. So there's things like high knee march or high knee jog to start increasing that heart rate. We're not sprinting. Some stationary skips, and then you would go into some split squats. There'd be some lateral squats, glute bridges, all these things to start priming your body for the workout, getting it ready for the workout. Okay? So that's the warm-up. The cool-down now is what you do after the workout is done. And so with the warm-up, we want to slowly get our heart rate up to prep it for that high intensity that we're going to do in the workout. In the cool-down, you want to start slowly bringing your heart rate down. So instead of doing your workout and then just lying on the ground and kind of going to sleep where your heart rate drops down so quickly, you want to go from doing your workout to maybe going and taking a little walk, getting your bottle of water, getting some sips, and slowly bringing that heart rate down. And then following that, we have a couple examples of stretches that you can do and movements that you can do, and even some focused breathing to help you kind of bring things down. Now for the movements, those are things that you'll be learning in class as well. For the breathing component, really, once you've done your little walk, done a little bit of stretching, then you want to lie on your back, arms at your side, close your eyes, and just do some focused breaths to, again, help control and bring that heart rate down a little more. So it'd be a deep breath in through your nose for a count of 3 or 4. You want to fill your belly, so you don't want to get a big chest. You want to actually have your belly rise, and then exhale through your mouth even slower for a count of 6 to 8 seconds. Do that for about 30 seconds to a minute, and you'll notice that you've brought that heart rate down and calmed yourself down a little bit, and then you'll be ready for whatever else you've got coming in your day. Whether it's going to sleep after this because it was all the way at the end of the day, or maybe you have to go to work, or you did this in the morning and you'll be ready to go to school. Okay? So those are the actual components of the workout. But now we want to look at how we can put it all together. So when we organize our exercises, okay, we've got different types of exercises that we're going to include. We're going to have a pushing exercise, a pulling exercise, knee dominant, I'm just going to put KD, hip dominant, core, and I'm going to put CV for a cardiovascular exercise. These are the kinds of exercises that you need to include in your workout. Now, for this assignment, you need to create a workout that's going to be about a minimum of 20 minutes to a maximum of 30 minutes. Because that's kind of that sweet amount of time, that sweet spot where we can all find that chunk of time in our day, as long as we're organizing our day appropriately. So this is kind of these are the movement groups that we want to include when we're making our workout. So there are a couple things we want to keep in mind when we're making a workout. Firstly, you're not limited to just one of each of these exercises. If you would like to have, for example, my example for a pushing exercise could be push-ups. If you want to have push-ups, but you also like shoulder raises, well, I can add another pushing exercise here. And maybe not shoulder raises, but shoulder presses. I'm going to put OH shoulder press. That means overhead shoulder press. Okay? Maybe I'm going to have two of those. Well, I'm going to make sure that if I have two pushing exercises, that I want to balance that by having two pulling exercises. So for me, maybe my pulls, I have rows, and then I'm going to add another pull. I have pull aparts. Okay? So that's one thing we want to keep in mind. We want to make sure that we're balancing the exercises, the types of movements. Because if I do a lot of pushing exercises, those muscles are going to start kind of getting tighter and pulling things in one direction. So I want to make sure I have those pulling exercises to balance out between those movements. Okay? So pushing and pulling. But now something I need to keep in mind. When I'm ordering my exercises, I have them in this order just so that you can kind of see all the movement groups are included. But when I'm creating my order, I could do any order that I want for my exercises. Okay? So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 different exercises. Okay? Now, when I'm creating the order of my exercises, I need to keep something in mind. Let's look at those pushing exercises. I have push-ups and overhead presses. So push-ups and overhead shoulder presses. Both of these are pushing movements. Okay, we talked about that. These are both pushes. Now, when I put them in my workout, I don't want to really have a pushing movement followed by another pushing movement. Think about that for just a moment here. Why don't I want to follow one pushing movement with another pushing movement? It's not wrong. It's not a bad thing, but it's really not recommended. The reason why is because if I'm doing my push-ups, getting my reps in, doing it for my 30 seconds or whatever amount it is, and then I have my short rest and I go to my overhead presses, I might not be able to do those overhead presses as well because it involves some of the same muscles because they're both pushing movements. So if I did a pushing, and then I decided to do a pull, so that's rows, and then pull aparts, and then I do my knee dominant, hip dominant, etc. I've done this thing where I'm tiring out my pushing muscles and then I do another push. And then I'm tiring out my pulling muscles and doing another pull. So we can still include all of those exercises, but instead of doing it in that order, what I might do is follow push-ups, which is my pushing exercise, with pull-aparts, which is a pulling exercise, and then go through my other exercises so that I'm not using the same type of muscles and the same type of movement right after. So this is a push followed by a pull. Now something though that you can keep in mind as well, if you really want to get an even better rest, pushes and pulls are both upper body exercises. So maybe instead what I'll do is I'll do a push-up followed by a knee dominant exercise like a squat. So now I'm thinking upper body push, lower body knee dominant. Now I might do my pull aparts. So I went from upper body push, lower body knee dominant. Upper body pull, lower body hip dominant. I'll do glute bridges. Okay? And so as I make my workout, I have that push, lower body, pull, lower body. Maybe now I'm going to do, I have that overhead press, so I'm just going to put OHP for overhead press. It's that other pushing exercise. I'll do my core exercise now. Maybe I'll do plank. I'll do my other pulling exercise, which will be rows. And then I'll do my cardio exercise, which maybe is going to be skips. So now I have my push, my knee dominant, my pull, my hip dominant, another push, core, my other pull, and cardiovascular. So that is one of the ways that I can order it. Just keeping in mind that, especially if you're a beginning exerciser, following up 2 pushing exercises or 2 of any of the same movement group can be really challenging. Okay? Not that you can't ever do that, but especially when you're starting out, we want you to avoid that. Okay? So this is one example of how I can arrange my exercises. If you look in your book, there are several other templates that you could follow. I can put these exercises in any order that I want. So I did a push, a knee dominant, pull, a hip dominant. I could have started with a hip dominant exercise or a knee dominant. I could have started with squats. Then I do my plank. Then I do my pull aparts. Any order that makes sense to you and that you know will allow you to work at your best in that workout. Now, I've chosen to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 exercises. That brings us to kind of formatting the rest of our workout. So keep that in mind. I've got 8 exercises. Okay? And remember, I want my workout to be between 20 to 30 minutes. So the next part in your program or your personal workout design assignment is the work to rest. Okay? So keep this in your head. I've got all these exercises. I'm going to now talk a little bit about work to rest. When we create this workout, if you flip back to the definition of workout in this particular assignment, we call it a time-efficient full body interval style workout. Okay, we've talked about the full body part. That's all those movements that we included. Interval style and time efficient, that's what I'm going to talk about now. That's the work to rest. So different than some other workouts where maybe somebody says, okay, I'm going to do 12 to 15 repetitions of this exercise, and maybe they're doing overhead presses, and they go 12 to 15 of these, okay? We're going to actually do it in an interval. The reason why we do that is because when I say I'm going to do 12 to 15 of these, it's never exactly the same amount of time to do those 12 to 15 reps. Okay? And we want to remember that this is a time-efficient workout. We've only got maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes in our day. We want to make sure that we stick to our schedule. So instead of doing reps, what we do is time. So for our workout, we like to have each exercise fit within a minute. So for example, my push-ups. Okay? I'm going to do my push-ups for 30 seconds, maybe if I'm a beginner exerciser. I'm going to work for 30 seconds, that's my work. And I'm going to rest for 30 seconds. 30 seconds of work, doing my push-ups, followed by 30 seconds of rest. 30 seconds plus 30 seconds equals 1 minute. So it takes me 1 minute to complete that exercise. Completing that exercise means both the work and the rest. That would mean that for every exercise in this workout, I'm going to do 30-30. So for my push-ups, for my squats, for my rows, for my deadlifts, for every exercise, I'm going to work for 30 seconds, and then I'm going to rest for 30 seconds. Okay? That's kind of like your entry level is 30-30. Now maybe you're someone who's more of a, you've exercised a bit, or you're an intermediate exerciser. Maybe you're going to do 35 seconds of work, followed by 25 seconds of rest. That's 35-25. Okay, I'm going to do my squats for 35 seconds, And then the rest of that minute, the 25 seconds, I'm going to rest. So notice how that's different from working with a rep-based workout as well. Instead of me doing those overhead presses or whatever the movement is for 12 to 15 reps, and then kind of going to my next exercise or my next set when I feel ready, we're setting the guidelines. We're saying, I get to work for 35 seconds, or I need to work for 35 seconds, but I only get 25 seconds of rest. Okay? As it gets harder, again, we can change this to make it even harder. 40, 20, which is kind of the sweet spot if you can get there. That's really challenging. It's really challenging, but a nice goal. And if you're like a high level, more experienced exerciser who can handle the challenge, something like 45, 15 you could do. Once you start getting past 45 seconds of work and getting less than 15 seconds of rest, likely you're going to struggle keeping up with this workout. For example, imagine doing 45 seconds of something like push-ups. Even for a seasoned exerciser or somebody who works out a lot, 45 seconds of push-ups is a lot. That's a long time. Okay? So this is really, there's not going to be many of us who are going to be working at this 45, 15. So let's set it up here. We've got our exercises. We've got our intervals. So let's make a little workout here. I'm not going to put specific exercises. I'm just going to write down the types of movements. So I'm going to put KD. We're going to do a knee dominant exercise, maybe like squats, followed by a push. We're going to do band presses. Again, look at the video on YouTube. Lots of examples of these exercises. Then we're going to do a cardiovascular exercise. Then we're going to do a hip dominant, not knee dominant, a hip dominant exercise, followed by a pull, followed by a core exercise, and maybe I really like lower body, so I'm going to do another knee dominant and another hip dominant. Boom. 8 exercises. I'm going to work at a, let's say, 40-20, work to rest, because I like working in 40 seconds. I can manage that for most exercises. 40 seconds on, 20 seconds on, off, rather. That equals a minute per exercise. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 exercises. Each exercise takes a minute. That means getting through this is 8 minutes. Okay? Now, that 8 minutes, this is called one set. Completing all of the exercises on your list is one set or one cycle. Okay? That, in this example, takes 8 minutes. If you chose to have only 6 exercises, which is the minimum amount of exercises, because you would cover all the movements, would take 6 minutes. But this takes 8 minutes. Okay? Now, I'm not going to keep just going through this list until I reach 20 to 30 minutes. Now I get a bit of a longer rest. So after my 8 minutes of work, I'm going to take 1 to 1.5 minutes of rest. That's kind of the range that I'm going to give you, 1 to 1.5 minutes. If it's less than 1 minute, it's probably not going to be enough rest. If it's more than 1.5 minutes, it's going to be too much rest and your heart rate came down too much. So for me, I'm going to say 1 minute of rest. That means one set of the exercises plus the rest. This equals 9 minutes. So how many sets would I need to do to get between 20 to 30 minutes? Okay, it would take me 3 sets.
Staff and students.
Excuse the announcement.
This is an announcement for the grade 9s and grade 10s. Grade 9, you can pick up your timetables from the homeroom classrooms. You should be meeting there around 9 o'clock. Grade 10, you can pick up your timetables in the hallway by the guidance office. Grade 11 and 12, post-highs. Grade 11 and 12, post-highs. You don't need to be here till this afternoon.
I'll wait for the announcement to finish up.
If you want to pick up your timetables, you're more than welcome to. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm filming this on the first day of school, so lots of stuff going on. Anyway, it takes 9 minutes to get the work done and have your 1 minute of rest. 9 minutes times 3 sets equals 27 minutes. Okay, 2 sets wouldn't have been enough. That would have only been 18 minutes. But 3 sets is exactly enough. It's between 20 to 30 minutes. That's 27 minutes to get this workout done. This is, as defined in our booklet, a time-efficient, full-body, interval-style workout that targets the muscular and cardiovascular system. So in your booklet, come back to that. There's another example of a workout that follows these guidelines. Following that, there's a couple questions under flex your brain muscle to see whether you really understand this stuff. And then the assignment checklist follows that on how to create that workout and what the expectations are, kind of recapping what needs to be included. So, hopefully, this is a good refresher from what your teacher talked about in class, or if you missed class, hopefully this explained it well. Read through it as well. Don't just watch the video, read through it. And all the best with creating this workout, and enjoy the process of creating it and understanding how to take ownership of your workout, your fitness, and your health.